if you right click in here, new software, instrument track, and then say we'll add in like a good one would be for melodies and stuff. If you're doing your own, Alchemy's a good one. Sculpture's a good one. Retro Synth has some good stuff. You can get some horns here, strings. You can use like your sampler and like some of these like synthesizers as well. Like the ES2 is one that you could use, or if you want to use like a basic piano, you could do that. A Mellotron was like a vintage piano sound. Clav is, I think the most famous song would be Still Dre by Dr. Dre, and Scott Storch did it on a Clavitron or clavinet. And you have like an organ setting or something, you could do that. But I would say Alchemy is going to be your bread and butter. I think Apple got this for Logic 10, and it ends up being like one of the best synths that they have. It honestly is a pretty quality synth for being a stock plugin too. So one thing that I would recommend is first you have all the sounds downloaded if you're really going to use Logic a lot again. Going through and rating things is wildly underrated. I think the best thing you can do is when you come in, like everything's going to be like this. It's not going to have a rating. You don't know if it's good or bad. And unless you write it down or memorize it, you don't know what's good and what's not good. You could literally be like, okay, let's play this. You know, like, what is that even doing? You know, like you'd have to go through and be like, okay, let's try this one. You know, and then it might not even apply to like hip hop. It could be like a funk bass. That could apply. You know, and it's got that funky sound to it. But if you're making trap stuff, you probably won't be using much of that unless you're, you know, automating it or whatever. So, you know, there's a whole bunch of videos on how each one of these things work. Like you can watch a video on how Alchemy works, or how you do drum machine, or how you can, you know, affect all the parameters and add effects and all that stuff. You know, those are all good to know, because if you want to be successful, you have to have a good understanding of a lot of it. Another big thing that you can do is, you know, just learn simple melodies. There's a lot of videos on that stuff too. You know, if you have a keyboard and you can play like a MIDI keyboard or something, you know, that's something great to learn. I think you can get like little and Akai MPK or whatever, like a single octave or two, and they're like $50 used or like $100 new. And they come with a little bit of softwares and stuff too, which is not a bad thing. But like for me, I have learned a decent amount of theory. I know people talk about it being like some scary shit or whatever, but it's really not that intimidating. It just takes a little bit of time to get used to. So like, we'll say we like can pick a sound that we like that or something. If you go to the edge of the sound or the note and you can drag it out or something, I'm just going to make something simple and then, you know, go from there. Yeah, that's not bad. Like, you know, some people could spit on that shit and make it top 10 record for sure. But if you want to add more detail to it, you could always add, you know, different notes. Some of them are going to sound good, some of them aren't. So if I go like, say I go back to here, you know, find what sounds good. Use your ears. Don't worry about like using your eyes as much. You know, find what sounds good and consistent. And, you know, if you don't know theory, how are you going to know which note to play? You know, it's not like you can worry about it too much if you're not going to learn the theory. But if you don't want to learn the theory, there's videos on, you know, plenty of ways that you can make melodies and stuff. You know, Maybe we'll add like something in there. You know, and you can change the way the sound is, like simple things like literally doing this. Yeah, you can do stuff like that. You can mess with these knobs. Like the big thing too is whenever you start messing with stuff and you're like, okay, let's try this, and move these all over the place. It might sound cool in one section of the song. So like, say I like click and drag that over here and then go to the end of this part and just like close that in so that it's, 8 bars. Command D will duplicate it. And then so say the next section you want it to sound different. So if I go to here, this is my verse. This is my verse section. You might not want that same sound there. So what I would do is I would, open up that one, maybe tweak it to sound different, and that will also bring significance to that section. And I think that's like a huge thing, a huge gem that people do not really talk about that much, and how to make your section sound different is you can literally tweak a sound and it sounds like a whole different section, so it's very obvious to the rapper, it's very obvious to the listener, but I might add, like, say you duplicate it over top of this one might be cool with having both of those sounds on there. And then, if this one's too obvious, maybe turn it down a bunch and find like a little sweet spot for it. Or, you might have to go back and tweak it a little bit more so that if you're layering sounds, which is a big thing that like a lot of the industry heads do, is they'll add a couple sounds on top of each other and change them around to where it sounds like one sound, but it's actually a couple sounds put together. One being louder or quieter than the other usually, because if this one's louder than this one, obviously it's going to stand out more. This one could be kind of subtle and in the background, or have like some reverb or something on it. And then so if you listen to this one in isolation, which is solo, is press S. So when you add all that reverb in this part right here, it might only play in the background. And then this one is kind of more up in your face, has a little bit of space to it, but not nearly as much. And remember that this channel is this right here, not this one. And the easiest way to do that is, so if I click on this right here and I'm like, which one of these is this channel? You can either look at this, which doesn't help because they're the same. You can just press on and off, and you'll see that if it's the right channel, it'll turn it off. So like, say I click on this one, it's not going to turn off over here. So that's how you quickly do it. I mean, I 100% guarantee every single producer has spent 20 minutes trying to make this sound different and then realized that he's actually messing with the other one. So just something to know. And then, say we have both of these sounds on top of each other. Something like that could be, it can be that simple and, still sell. You go listen to some of your favorite songs, you listen to the actual beat, there's a certain amount of them that are literally just really simple stuff to give the rapper or the artist a lot of space to be able to say whatever they want, add their ad libs, add some effects, and do cool stuff. And it also allows the engineer to be able to place things where they want them and be very specific with what sounds they want, So it's like, if they want one section to be louder than the other, they can play with it if there's only a couple things for them to tweak. If they have to tweak 35 different instruments, it's going to take them so much longer. There's going to be so much less space. You know, you don't necessarily want to do everything. You know, a couple instruments max. Like, you do not want 7 instruments in one section because it's going to sound like a bunch of mess, you know. So it's something to think about, something to work on. Another really good thing that you can do, pull up one of your favorite songs and listen to what instruments are in it. Listen for how the kick sounds, how the hi-hat sound, how the snare sounds, and then figure out like what you want yours to sound like. Or, you know, if you're trying to make a tight beat for DaBaby, you know, his hi-hats on his songs are very particular, something that not every single artist or producer is going to have the same style or sound or whatever. So, you know, find ways that you can duplicate things or watch videos on it and do that. I think is a big part of it and will definitely help you out in the long run. So I think the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to bounce this stuff. So if you don't have like a really nice computer, all this stuff probably ain't going to run very well together. So one thing that you can do is you can go and individually take these instruments. And what I would usually do is I would say, you know, have all this in mind and then maybe delete it or something. And then, so, because all that's going to take up processing on your computer. You know, if you can do it down to like one little spot or one little, you know, section for each. And then what we're going to do is we're going to press Control B, and then it's going to let you bounce it. So let's say we'll call this one this reverb, or even more simple, I would say bells reverb. You want to be on a new track, you can mute the source because you're not going to need that anymore. If you don't want the effects to be involved, you can bypass it. I usually include the audio tail, but for now, let's turn that off. If you turn it on, I'll show you what it does, but it's going to be one more step for most people that isn't necessary right now. So let's turn it on and let me show you what it does. And then so like you notice that it drew it out longer, and it's because it has an audio tail. So when the note ends, it keeps playing the reverb. So let's go back, and then you can also right click and go to bounce and place, and then it'll bring the same thing up. So let's say bells, reverb, and then turn this off. And then make sure this is on overload protection. Do not have this on. And so what this is going to do is it's going to bounce it, and then it's going to cut it whenever this is done, which is okay because that's fine for now. We don't necessarily want that initial, or we don't want this tail on everything, you know. So then we're going to go to this one, Control B. We're going to put bells without anything else, you know, just do that. Just do bells. That's going to mute this channel, but if you notice, this is still on, and that means it's still running. So you're going to want to turn that off. Another thing that you can do too is you can take both channels, click and drag it, shift and click, it will select the other one. And if you press, I'll show you by pressing X, brings up the mixer. If you press the power, it'll turn both of them off or both of them on. So if you want to do something like maybe add an EQ to both tracks, you can just press one and it'll turn them both on. Or you can go to here, you can go to channel gain or channel EQ, I'm sorry, and just do that way, and it'll add them to all of them. So if you have like 10 tracks and you want EQ on all of them, you can add an EQ to all of them immediately. But you're going to want to turn this off because it will stop using your CPU on your computer.